Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Bonsais Forever. I'm in the greenhouse today and fumbling around with stuff already, so good morning. Today I am going to be doing a demonstration on in-depth how to prune your juniper. I've got a Juniperus procumbens. It's a very common bonsai variety. This one was a nursery stock that I put into a bonsai pot. It's been, let's just say it's been a couple of months in this pot, because I don't remember how long ago I did this. I've done a lot of them like this, so it's doing well. It's got new growth at the tips. You can see all the tips are different colors than the rest of the tree. Let me kind of zoom in for you guys. There we go. So as you can see, the tips are a different color than the rest of the tree, which means that is all new growth. And it's already got new growth that's hardened off. The hardening off process is when foliage is growing. It is a lighter green, it's soft, it's fresh, it's new, it's growing. It's taking energy from the tree as it's growing. As it hardens off, that literally means that the foliage gets hard. It slows way down in growing or completely stops growing. I've seen varieties where the leaves continue to get bigger after they've hardened off, but they slow way down. That's when the foliage is producing energy. That's when it's giving energy back to the tree, is once it's hardened off. When it's fresh new growth, taking, hardened off, giving. Okay, so with that being said, when you're pruning your juniper, you don't really want to take off all the new growth when you're pruning it, because then it doesn't get bigger. So trees have to grow. They do. It's nature. That's what they have to do, right? So you want them to grow. You want them to get new branches. You want them to get more branches. You want them to get longer branches. Now, with that being said, you want the tree to have a shape. Yeah, it's a bonsai. It's art. We're trying to make it look a certain way. So with this tree, I'm going to kind of bring you down a little bit here. So with this tree, it's kind of hanging over this direction. Okay, so you can see that it kind of flows off in this direction, and it gets really long out here because the trunk is clear over here, and it goes all the way out to here, right? So this whole thing is basically the trunk bent right here. The trunk bent over and produced all of this. This is a secondary branch. This is the original branch going off in this direction. I hope you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. Okay. So this would technically be the end of the branch, the trunk, because it goes all the way down into here and just goes straight off. That's the end of the trunk right there. Okay, so then I've got a secondary branch that goes all the way out to here. Okay, so that is actually from here to here is actually longer than from here to here. Showing you that, one of the things that driving me nuts, you know that weeds drive me nuts in my trees, so it's gotta go right now, and then we'll get back to the tree. Okay, I feel better. Okay, so I want this tree to have this big swooping section over here, but I don't need it to be this big. Okay, I want the tree to be proportional to the trunk. And right now this is very much in development. There's a very young tree. This has got a lot of work to do, a lot of years of growing. So nothing right now is super dire or absolutely important, except to keep the tree alive, right? So one thing with junipers, the branches continue to grow and grow and grow. As you can see, it's growing and growing and growing. So this is a branch. This right here is a branch. All of these pieces that are sticking up are actually branches. So if you don't want this branch right here to continue to grow and grow and grow and get really tall, you're going to want to trim that back. Okay, so trimming that back, super simple. Let me grab a piece up close here so that I can show you guys like an up close view of what it looks like to cut the branch. Alright, now let's see if I can figure out where I'm at. Okay, so right here I've got this branch. It's long. It goes all the way down to here. You guys probably can't see where it there you go. See where it's touching the branch here? This is actually on top of the main branch here. A lot of times we want to take the on top branches off. Right this minute, I think I'm going to leave this one on because it helps the aesthetic of it. So I'm going to leave it on there, but I'm going to trim it back. So I'm going to go back to where each all right, let me go back and explain this too. So each one, I don't know if I can get this camera in any closer here. So I want you guys to see like really what I'm talking about here, because sometimes it's hard to explain unless you can actually see it. Okay, you guys, I'm going to talk about this branch right here and show you the kind of the structure of the branch, if I can. This is the secondary branch, or a primary branch, because it's coming right off the trunk here, right? You can see it coming right off of the trunk. This is a primary branch going all the way out to here, okay? And I'm in really close so you guys can see this. And this is a secondary branch coming off of the primary branch. So it comes all the way out to here, right? And then you got tertiary branches branching off of this branch, okay? So each one of those will turn into a branch if you let it grow. All right, so if I'm going to keep this branch, which I am, I want to shorten this branch because it's getting really long and it doesn't need to be super thick right this minute. It will thicken up as it ages. But currently, at the stage this tree is at, it doesn't need to be thicker, right? So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to, there's a secondary or tertiary branch here, and there's a tertiary branch on this side. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut it off right here, just beyond this tertiary branch and this tertiary branch. So now that branch has been trimmed back. Super simple, yet super complicated, right? So how do I know which branches I want to take off? Okay, that's the next part. You saw how to trim the branches. You just cut it back to a spot where it's going to branch out and make more branches, because everything that you're doing with this tree is to cause ramification. Ramification is more branches. That's just the simple term of ramification. You want to go from one branch to two branches. So basically on a juniper it's kind of like that and kind of not like that, because you've got all of these branches running down this branch right here. So now you're asking yourself, how do I know which branch to take off, right? I want this to look a certain way. I personally want them to look like a natural looking tree, as these trees, as they grow long branches like this. This is natural. This is how they grow. So I want this to look natural, right? But I don't want it to be all unkept like this. It's got long branches just periodically through the canopy, right? So I want to kind of even them out so that they're somewhat even, but I also want uneven length branches on the top here everywhere. Okay, so basically I want it somewhat smooth. but I want it kind of uneven. Okay, now I'm gonna go to some of the larger cuts that I want to do on this tree to start off. This branch right here is really long, and if you look, this branch right here is the end of the main branch right here. Okay, so I want to take this branch off. I'm gonna come in with the branch cutters, and I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna cut this all the way back. Oh, I might not, because this comes off of it too. Okay, so here's where decisions are made. This is how we make decisions, okay? So if you look right here, I've got this branch, this one, this one, this one, and this one. This one's coming off behind, so I'm not going to worry about that. But I've got 5 branches right there, right? Coming right off. Actually, this one isn't. That one's coming from farther back, but it's in the same space. So I've literally got 4 branches coming off the end of this tree. All right, I need to make a decision on which 1 or 2. This is where I'm talking going from 1 to 2, because this is 1 and we want to go to 2. All right, so this one's super long, that one's going. Okay, I'm taking this one off. I'm gonna take it off farther forward just so that I can make a point here, because this, I could have cut it back farther, like back here, but this branch is part of that trunk also. All right, but I kind of want to get rid of this one because it's going just straight down here, and I kind of want everything to level off here. So because this one's going down and this one is going straight out, this one's going to come off too. So I'm going to cut this back to where I was going to cut the other one back to, back in there. And if you see, it's got this large piece right there that both of these branches were attached to, like this. They were attached like that at the end. So it went from 1 to 2 originally, if you can see that. It went from 1 to 2, but now those branches are too long for the composition. Now you can look at it and see that everything's kind of flowing outwards now. Right, and I cut it way back here. Let's see if you guys can see that. I cut it way back in there so that you can't see where I cut it off when you look at it from this way. So some of the cuts you're going to want to make to where you don't see the cut point, because now it looks like a natural tree. It looks like that's how it's supposed to be, right? So you can't see any other cut points on this tree, and there's a couple of them where I have removed large branches where you can't tell where they are, just because when you cut it off, you cut it in such a way that it hides where you cut it off. You can't always do that, but when you can, it's a good practice too. And also, while you're in this process, find dead pieces, just pull them out. These things shed. They shed little tiny branches that aren't producing. And don't drop the scissors on your feet. I did not, but that's not a good idea. So another way you can get the dead stuff out of the tree is kind of doing this. Every so often, go out and pet your tree a little bit, love on it, and that'll get some of the dead stuff out of there too. And if it doesn't, like this piece, just go out there and either pull it off, because a lot of times they just come right off. You just go in there and clip it off with your scissors. All right, so now that I've shown you cutting off the long branches that we don't need in the composition, taking off the dead parts. Now the next part is to make sure that your tree can breathe. If you've got branches laying on top of other branches, this branch right in here is going to have a hard time breathing and getting enough sun. This one's not super dense yet, so it can still get sun, so this branch isn't dying off. But eventually, once this branch starts getting more foliage, this branch is going to be shaded out and it's going to die. So either I keep this branch or I keep this branch. So I am going to keep this branch because I want it to kind of flow. I want it to flow, right? So I don't want to have it just a flat pad. I want it to kind of flow, because trees flow. They have a direction to them. So I'm going to take this branch off right at the second or the primary branch here. I cut it off way back in here, and now I've got this open space right here. Now this branch has a place to be, this branch has a place to be, and this branch has a place to be. So taking off that one branch opens up for 3 more branches to be healthy. So anytime that you can do a cut where you're taking off a branch that's opening up space for multiple branches, that's personally where I go to take that one off. All right, so now I've got this smaller branch in between these 2 larger branches here, and this smaller branch is producing, but it's kind of in between both these 2 branches, so these branches can't spread out. I want these 2 branches to spread out and make pads themselves, because they'll round off and take up this space. So this branch has to go. So I'm going to go in, cut it off right at the primary branch. I'm cutting them straight off. I'm not cutting them concaved. I'm not cutting them anything crazy. I'm just taking them right off, and that's perfectly fine. These trees, the bark will shed, and it will cover this up eventually, so it won't look like it has a cut probably by next year. All right, so now I'm working this branch, this main branch right here. That's what I'm working on right now, and it's best to pick a branch, work all the way in. Either you can work from the inside out or the outside in. Either way, this one I'm working from the outside in. So now I've got this stuff taken care of. Now I'm getting into this area, and these branches here are interfering with this branch over here. And I really don't need these branches in here because I've got this to create this pad, and these branches will take up this space here. So you don't want a whole lot of void space in your trees, but you want enough void space to make the tree healthy so that everything can breathe, everything can get light. So I'm going to take these smaller branches off in here. Too small to, well, they're large enough to propagate, but I have plenty of propagation, so the larger ones I'll keep. The woody branches like these, if they have a woody end to the branch, I'm going to keep those and propagate those, but these don't have any woody end, so I'm going to get rid of those, put them in the compost. All right, so now I'm going to go to this side of the branch over here. I think you guys can see this. Yeah, there you go. So right in here, I'm going to work on this section here now. So I've got these branches are coming off the main trunk here. They're coming off in here. They're really small, thin branches. They're taking up space in here, which is good, but they're super thin, really small branches. I'm taking those off. Plus they're on the underside of the curve here, so those have to come off. So one rule of bonsai: anything that's inside of a curve has to come off. Trees don't typically grow stuff in the curves and it survive. They'll grow it, but it doesn't typically survive very long. And the idea behind bonsai is to make your tree look like an older tree. So taking that stuff off gives the illusion of age to your tree, whether it is or not. All right, so then I've got this branch here. It's got some size to it, but it's still kind of a small branch. I could leave this here and let that grow out, but it's right close to the curve right here. So this guy's got to go. And that could actually propagate pretty easily. So we'll hang on to that. And I'm putting them in a cup of water just to keep them moist for now. All right, so now I've got all this open space, and I've got these branches over here. Little branches just starting to grow. Having little branches like this can help you to fill in spaces or to make your tree more compact. So if I wanted to make this branch more compact, I would keep these, because they're short, and I can keep them short, and they'll make this space have foliage, but they'll be short and compact. Right now, I think I'm going to focus on these larger branches out here, and I think I'm going to cut these smaller branches off right here. Because right now I'm not looking at making this more compact. I'm wanting this to grow out. Okay, so now you can see, let me grab the camera here. So now you can see the top of this branch. It's clear, clear, clear. I've got this one guy here to give it some foliage in this section. This will grow out and it'll be part of the top of the canopy right here. And I'll let that grow. And then these guys are all growing down this branch, and I've got this branch could probably go, but I'm going to keep it for now. So I've got a branch on this side, and then a little bit forward on this side, a little bit forward on this side, a little bit forward on this side, this side, and then there. See how I did that? And that's typically what you want to do on a juniper. Have branch, 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 like that. So now that we know that that's what we're trying to accomplish on each branch, I'm going to go ahead and do that on this branch just really quick for you guys. I'm going to open it up, take off the branches that I don't need in the composition. I'm keeping the larger branch here, taking the smaller one off, and then I've got this branch laying over the top of this branch. The branch that's on top is coming off, so I'm taking that big guy off there. And now this branch has got the one, this one's the top, so I'm not really counting that right now. I'm leaving it for this moment until this stuff fills out. So I've got one over here, one over here, over here, and over here. So this end of the branch is good. So then we do that to this branch. Anything underneath on the back side of the branch comes off. Okay, so I've got some underneath right up here in the beginning. So if I want to shorten this branch, I'll let these grow. The ones up front underneath, I'll let those grow, because that will be the end of the branch. I'll cut it back, I'll cut this back to this and let this be the end of the branch. But I'm going to let that grow out so that I know that it's going to survive. Okay, so this is going to stay like this for now because it is still a small branch. I want to see what of these grows stronger and which ones are weaker. I'm going to take the weaker ones off and trim back the really strong ones. But that's going to stay like that for now. Okay, so then I'm going to go up here to these branches. These are the apex of the tree. The apex means the top. Okay, so these are going to be considered the apex of the tree. I've got 3 branches here. I don't need 3 branches for the apex. So I'm going to look through here and I'm going to figure out which one is the strongest branch. That's the one I'm keeping. Okay, so this one up front here, it's kind of at the elbow right here. It's at the elbow right here. So I've got a branch going this way, and this way. I don't want 3 branches right there. 1 to 2. So this one being the third one, the little one's got to go. All right, and then I've got a little piece here. I've got this little piece here. This they would consider crotch growth because this is the crotch of this branch meeting this branch. Okay, so that's fresh new growth. Now this is always if I don't want this branch, okay, and I want, because it's going in a weird direction or because it's growing really weak or something, I don't want this branch, right? I'll let this grow. While I'm letting this grow for a while, I'll let this grow. And once this gets strong enough to remove this, then I'll remove this if I don't want this piece. I want this piece, okay? In this composition, I do want this piece. If I didn't, leave it. If I do, cut it off. Okay, so that goes because I do want this branch. Okay, so there's that. I do kind of like this branch, but like I said, I've got these two branches. This branch here is the stronger of the two branches, and it's kind of going in this direction. So that'll cause this to be a branch growing out, and I can have the apex of the tree up over here. And I apologize, it started raining while I'm working, and it's raining hard enough that I can't really go inside now. I love it. I'm gonna take a break. Okay, so the rain stopped, so now I can get back to work, and I really don't know where I was at with this, so we're just gonna go from where I would like to start back into this. Okay, so I think I was talking about these two branches here and talking about the apex of the tree. I don't want to take off too much foliage right now, but I do want to take off enough to get this tree going. So this branch right here, this one's gonna go because I want this to be the apex of the tree right here. So I'm gonna let this couple of branches grow out for a while and let them develop. I've got a branch right here on the inside. It's a smaller branch, so I'm gonna remove that for now. All right, so then now that I've shown you these couple of branches and the apex of what I want to do, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to take out all the branches that I don't want to be part of this tree. So I'm taking this one off because it's a tiny, weak little branch. And then this one, I've got a branch here, here, and here. So I've got all three of these branches right here. This one I'm going to keep because I want something in this space here. But these other two I don't need because they're on the back side of the arch of this branch. So I want that to be open. This apex, this branch to be a branch here, and then I want this branch to be a branch here. So I'm going to thin this branch out so that it follows the back and forth of each of the branches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Taking off some of the stuff off the top, making sure that I'm looking at the bottom of the branch if I need to take stuff off the bottom in the back here. I'm going to leave the bottom ones on the front here just in case I want to change the direction of the branch. So I've got this one going off this direction, and then I've got one going off here. I'm going to take that little piece out. And I don't want to rush this, but I don't want to take forever trying to explain something just over and over and over. That one's on the bottom. This one's on the bottom. Sometimes the ones on the bottom are going to be your branches that you're going to wire out later. I'm not wiring anything on this tree right now. So here's the one that's on the bottom that I'm going to leave for later, maybe to change the direction. Alright, so I'm going to also, on this branch, I don't want this branch to get any longer, so I'm going to cut the end of it off. I'm just going to cut it off right here. At this point, it doesn't matter where I'm cutting it off. I'm just cutting it to keep it from growing longer. These branches will grow longer eventually, but we'll deal with those later once they start growing longer. And I want this to fill out, so all these smaller branches, I'm going to let them run for now. I'm going to let them run, which means I'm going to let them grow out for now. Later on, we'll cut them back. So now I'm looking at this branch that's coming off the side here. It's all of this, all of that is one branch. It's going in all kinds of different directions. I want it to go in a specific direction where it has kind of a flat plane here. So this branch going up here is all up in the way of everything else that I'm trying to do. So I'm going to look back into this branch and see if I want to remove the whole thing or just parts of it. So I'm going to remove the crotch growth of it right here. That comes out. And then looking at the rest of this branch, it looks like it's just going to grow in a direction that I really don't want that branch growing. So I'm taking the whole branch out. So that whole piece is going to come off. So now I've got this flat piece here, and I've got pieces over here. This one's going kind of flat. This one's growing upwards. I'm going to take this off. And then I've got a couple of pieces on the bottom I'm going to take off. The crotch growth I'm taking out. The bottom growing branches here I'm going to take off. The small weak branches, bottom branches. So then I've got right here where it goes up or it goes out. I'm taking the upward part off. I'm taking the whole upward growing branch off. I know that it kind of looks like I'm doing a lot of removing, which I am, but later on this will make a lot more sense once this starts growing out and you can see it start to develop. So how I know if I've got lower branches without looking under the branch, you can feel it. Like run your finger underneath the branch and you can feel where the branches are at. So I'm going in here and I'm going to take off all of the downward growing branches at the inside of this branch. And I'm also, as I'm taking the downward facing branches off, like I said, I'm looking to see if they can be used as part of the composition or not. So I've got branches growing on the side and then one growing down. So the downward one comes off. Growing on the side. All these are growing on the side. I've got this one growing on the top. This one's growing on the top. Those are coming off. This one's growing upwards. I'm going to trim it back so that it has a flat profile here. Because the upward ones, I want to keep them short. The side ones, I want them to grow out. And that definitely makes sense later on in the growing of the tree. But it's safe to say that all the ones that are growing upwards, if you're trying to keep foliage on the top of the branch, keep them short and let the side ones grow. Because I have taken off all of the, like completely taken off all the branches that are growing upwards, and it looks weird for a while until more new ones start growing upwards, and then it starts filling in. So I'm keeping the upward growing branches. So once I get to the end of this, it looks okay. That branch looks pretty good. This one's growing outwards. It's kind of growing up now, but it'll grow outwards, and we'll leave that. Just cutting the tips of these off to have a profile of this branch. Okay, so now I'm back to the first branch. After we've done all of the trimming out here, now I want to shorten some of these branches because I want to make it, this whole thing, like a pad is what they call it. So I'm going to trim these back. The end of the branch, I'm just going to go in a little ways. It doesn't have to be a long ways. Find out where you want the end of the branch to be and go back to there and just cut it off. Don't be scared of cutting pieces off. Don't cut off too much, but eventually you'll learn what too much is, and don't be scared of taking stuff off of the tree. Okay, so now if you look at this branch, primary branch, this is a secondary branch. On this side of the branch, all these branches are longer than these branches. We don't want longer and shorter, longer and shorter. So what I'm going to go do is on the longer side, I'm going to trim these back to reduce some of the strength in these branches so that these branches will catch up. Because we want them to be similar in strength from side to side. So going back and cutting some of these stronger branches back will definitely help with that. So just shorten them up. Shorten them up. Going way back in here, taking the very interior branches off. The inside branch that's going towards the other branch, I'm taking that off. Alright, and then we're going to go to this branch here. We're going to look at that one too. Kind of do the same thing. Take the bottom stuff off. And it's just, you're repeating the same thing over and over for each branch. The top branches, cut those short. The ones that are growing upwards, the ones that are growing out, you can let those grow longer. The upward branch, cutting it short. I'm going to cut this upward branch going upwards here, and I'm going to leave the under branch right here. I'm going to leave this under branch because eventually I want to cut it back to that branch, but I want it to gain some strength before I cut it back to it. So then I'm going to go to the next branch and just keep repeating the process. The farther in branches that are growing on the bottom, I'm taking those off. Branches that are impeding other branches, I'm taking those off. Because like I said, eventually this will all make sense as you watch the tree grow after you've taken stuff off. Watch what it does, and then you'll know a little bit more as to what you want to take off next time and what you don't want to take off next time. And like I said, it's a tree, it's alive, it does grow. So taking something off at one point and not wanting that to be off, these trees are very forgiving. The procumbens and nanas, they're very forgiving. They backbud relatively rapidly during the summertime. Obviously they hibernate during the wintertime, and you want to leave them outside so that they can hibernate. But during the summertime they grow pretty rapidly. So you can cut off, you could probably trim your tree several times a year to maintain a profile. If it's not actively growing, I wouldn't trim it. So if it's actively growing and you can see new growing tips, that's when you would want to be watching it to see if you need to trim it. And right here I'm just cutting the tops or the ends of the upward growing branches, leaving the sideward growing branches to increase in length a little bit. And the back here I'm taking the bottom branch off. And then I'm just going to the next branch and the next branch. This one's a farther back upward growing branch that's coming all the way off. This is an upward growing branch, just trimming it back. I hope that you guys can see this. I'm not really paying attention to the camera right now, sorry. Pretty sure, yeah, you guys can see what I'm doing. So just continuously doing that through all the branches, because I haven't done that to all the branches yet. So now I'm going back to each branch and cutting the downward facing and trimming the upward facing branches after I've gotten rid of all the branches that I don't want on the tree. So I go through and I cut off all the branches I don't want on the tree before I do this. because I don't want that branch. It's already gone, so I don't have to go back and trim it, or I'm not going through and trimming it and then going back and just taking it off. So I really hope that this all makes sense to y'all. If it doesn't make sense, you guys can always leave a comment or a question in the comment section, and I do go back and read those. Sometimes as soon as I get them, sometimes it's a couple of days, but I do go back and I read them and I answer the questions best I can. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll make another video, a new video on a question that I've gotten, so that I can actually show what I'm doing to answer the question. So these are mostly side growing branches. I'm going to let these grow for now. I'm going to let this one grow for now. The apex, I already went through that a little bit. I just kind of want to open it up and make sure that these branches can grow out. So now you see what it looks like after I've trimmed it. That's what it looks like after I've trimmed it. And you can go back and look at the beginning of the video and then come back and look at this part and see that a lot has changed, but not a lot has changed. I mean, the shape of the tree is still very similar. It's still got pieces going upwards and outwards and all that. So it's still like an uneven, but it's got more of a shape to it. And this branch is kind of growing on the top. I'm going to trim this one down a little bit. It looks a little weird growing all the way out there like that. And then I'm just going to cut the tips of these off. I want to cut just the tip off because I do want ramification on these tiny little branches too. And I don't know if you can see it, but right here, here, and here, there's a little bud that's going to make this branch ramify, and there's a little bud right here that'll make this branch ramify. But now it's within the profile of the tree. All right, so really that's all there is to trimming your procumbens nana. It's that process each time you trim it, just over and over and over. And you want to let it grow in between each trimming. You want to let it grow out. You want to let it regain some strength, and you want it to grow new branches. You've got all this new back budding that you're going to get from trimming it. When you take the end of the branch off, it's going to cause the main branch to back bud. And if you're not happy with the way this part of the branch looks, the inner part of the branch looks, cut the end of the branch off and watch it back bud, and then pick the branches that you want to keep and then remove other branches. It's not hard. I mean, it's not hard. It shouldn't be scary. Cutting branches off your tree shouldn't be scary. With the junipers, as long as you leave more than 30% of the foliage, that branch will survive. So if you're watching and this is the first time that you're doing bonsai, or the first time that you're trimming your juniper or your procumbens juniper, there are some exceptions to the juniper rule of 30% and cutting back and back budding. There are some exceptions. This is not the exception. So I'm just going to go over this one. And when I get to one of those trees, I'll let you know that this is the exception to the juniper rules. So the procumbens it's not an exception. So we'll make it simple. Okay? Cut off the branches you don't want to start off with. Go back and clean up the crotch growth that you don't want and take that out. And then you go back and profile the branches, which is cutting them back, removing the length of them, removing the length of the upper branches. That's profiling. And then you go and you look at your tree and see if there's anything else that just stands out to you that isn't appealing to you, and trim it back, remove it, or figure out if there's something that you can do to improve it later, and then do the work that's going to make it backbud later. So like I said, if you cut the branch back, it'll cause the interior to backbud. So I think that's as simple and as complicated as I can explain the pruning of a juniper. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Hopefully y'all learned something. Like I said, if you have questions, feel free to ask questions. I love answering questions. So I'm going to give you a spin around of the tree, let you see what all I did. I'm really starting to like this tree. It's looking really nice. It's getting some character to it. Now, who knows, later on this branch here might get shortened or cut off, or right now it looks good. I'm liking it. And I know there's going to be a lot of times where you're watching a video and they're like, so this is the front, or this is the front, or this tree doesn't have a front yet. It may or may not ever have a front. I'm not a huge fan of making the front of the tree. I want the whole tree to have good character, and I want the whole tree to look good. So I don't always pick a front. I do sometimes if I need to, but I don't always pick a front. So we are going to end this video right here, and I just want to say thanks for watching. I appreciate all y'all's support. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or a question in the comment section, and I'll see you on the next one.